All right, welcome in, everybody. This is crazy. Finally, high school football is back already. Oh my gosh. It feels like it's been way too long. Reality, it really hasn't. Summer's still kind of going on. Everyone's just getting back into the swing of things at school, university, some open today with classes. Is there a better time of year? I don't know. That's a question that we're going to have to answer in this show, but I would say no. And Wayne Bradford, who will join us in a second, is going to say no. But what a time to be alive, everybody. It is Wednesday, August 20th, 2025, less than 48 hours from the start of the high school football season. We've got a lot to talk about tonight. It is our high school football mega preview. Wayne and I are going to be breaking down so many things, including the three regions of many Erie County teams, who we think could be District 10 Players of the Year, some Teams of the Year, and just how the regions and the district will shake out. It is your favorite time if you're a football fan. It's our favorite time, too, and we're happy to be with you on this Wednesday. Make sure to like, subscribe, follow us at GemCitySN. We are live tonight on YouTube, Facebook, X, Instagram, wherever you get your podcasts. Thanks for being part of our show tonight. We're also excited for the fall, too, because we got a lot of really awesome announcements, including some new shows that will be joining us in the coming weeks. Make sure to stay tuned for that, including a really big one you're going to want to hear in the next few weeks as well. We'll be announcing that very soon. But people who are on our board now know that Rebbage Investments is our proud sponsor of the show, keeping financial guidance simple. If you can, give them a call, 814-734-3433, or head over to the website at www.rebbageinvestments.com. All right, Wayne Bradford in the chair tonight. He's joining us because he gets an extra day of rest. General McLean doesn't play till Saturday, which is, I'm assuming, kind of weird for you, Wayne, because you're used to normally just starting on Friday nights, but that's how the cookie crumbles to start week one. Is it weird not playing, suiting up on Friday?
It really is. It's been a struggle for us to get a game. It's been chronicled. This is our fourth different opponent for week one. So I just hope it happens. I hope nothing happens here in the next 48 hours. But it should be a great one. Duke had a fantastic year last year, and have an outstanding quarterback. The young man's going to go play Division I baseball at Delaware. Well coached, disciplined, so it should be a lot of fun.
A good thing for you guys, it's one of two really good games, maybe three really good games if you count the Mercer County matchups on Saturday as well. You've got you guys and DuBois, and a game that I'll be calling on Saturday. Mercier's Prep traveling to Sharon. We'll be talking a lot more about those two teams a little bit later on in the show. But I mean, it is crazy that we're already here, and you've gone through preseason, Wayne. All these teams have gone through camp and whatnot. Are there any final touches that you can put on the preseason training camp stint right now, or is it just getting ready for Friday and Saturday for these guys? What's the team mindset going into this weekend?
Yeah, I think you're just so ready to hit someone else. You know what I mean? It's an old adage, but you've competed and practiced the last few weeks of May, all of June, all of July against the same people, right? It's one thing to go out and do some 7-on-7s. And most of us have had just one small sample in terms of our scrimmage, but you're tired of seeing the same person and blocking the same person and attempting to tackle the same person or cover the same person. So I think our kids are just ready to, go out and entertain someone and hit somebody else rather than themselves.
I was going to say, you can only get so chippy until you actually want to have the pads against other people. And speaking of Friday night, we are going to bring back our high school football rapid reaction show that will begin starting this Friday and every Friday during the high school football season at 10 o'clock. So make sure to join us. We're adding that back to the schedule this year. We had a really great time with it last year. Can't wait. Nick's going to join us. Paul Adamczyk will join us from time to time. Wayne, whenever. Maybe he will join us tomorrow since he's got the night off, or maybe it's an early sleep for you. We'll see. But Friday nights at 10 o'clock, high school football rapid reaction here on the Gem City Sports Podcast Network. Join us. It's a fun night as we recap and talk all things and have a lot of fun with week one of the high school football season. All right, let's start in Region 7, Wayne. That work for you?
Sure.
All right, so we'll start with previewing the three regions that we really look at a lot, and it's no disrespect to the Crawford County teams. We love the Cambridge Springs of the world. The Sagertown Region 2 is going to be an unbelievable battle. Region 1 will be fun in Mercer County. You've got Mercer's Prep in Region 3, which we'll talk a little bit more about later in the show. And, of course, the Region of Death in Mercer County with Sharon, Hickory, Titusville, Conneaut, and then Grove City, Slippery Rock, and the lot. But we start in Region 7 because I think, Wayne, maybe more than ever, and I don't want to put a open timeline on it, but I don't know if we've ever seen a region with McDowell, Prep, and Erie High that you could argue will be as competitive as what this year's region could be. Typically, it is a two-horse race, right? You know, Prep sitting there in 5A, McDowell and Erie are going to play in 6A, but for region's sake, these three teams are, I think, in a lot of ways, even in terms of the talent versus coaching matchups, because everyone's got something different. Let's start with the big story of the offseason, right? Mike Mishler comes back to Cathedral Prep. We know the history with him, the state titles that he's won, the state title games that he's been to. You had a chance to, you've been around him, you coached on Prep staff, you've been part of that Rambler focus. What does he bring back that will immediately change the team for the better that they did not have the last few seasons?
Mike's very organized. He's very methodical, and he's a calming presence. So Mike's a big man, but he's a very calming presence, and he's got his priorities right in terms of faith, family, football, in that order, and he approaches the game that way. And it just gives the kids a sense of, evenness and calmness, that they're never too high, they're never too low, and there's that confidence that, he's going to come up big in the big games because he's been there before. He understands situational football, and that experience, that calm, that peace he has inside. Is reflective of the team, right? So the team kind of performs that way, and they're always going to be in a game.
Now, the good thing that Coach Mishler has coming back at Prep, of course, serving as the offensive coordinator last year, is Davin Friedman's back at quarterback. The junior last year who was the starter. He took over last season. He's back as a senior. That's number one that helps. Now, the problem that Prep's going to run into is they lose the majority of their running game from last year, but Desiree Carson comes back as a junior who had what I thought was a really relatively productive year and actually led the team in rushing, although he wasn't necessarily the feature back. That was Charbel Latouf. So the pieces are there. There are some guys that they're going to have to step up this year for Prep, but to me, really, it falls on Friedman's shoulders. If the Ramblers are going to want to make it far in 5A, I think he has to take a step up this year, and I think he's capable of doing that. The defense for me, Wayne, is really where Prep's going to make their heyday. Matt Oblick in the middle comes back. He's going to be a key part. And I think we all know that the defense will run itself. Coach Mishler, I think, can probably coach Davin Friedman up well enough to be that stud quarterback. What say you about the way Prep will look like this season in terms of how Mishler may run things?
Well, he's got Jeremiah Conley back as his OC, so that's huge. So there's some continuity there. I think the biggest questions, the offensive line. God bless Coach Sytuck, and I think that's probably the biggest loss in the Prep program, is just the presence of Coach Sy. You talk about another guy who is a calming presence, a physics/calculus teacher that the young men really looked up to, that saw every day in the classroom. So. Jaheim Basham stepping in as the offensive line coach right out of college. Jaheim was a great player for us. I got a chance to coach Jaheim, but really, what's the offensive line going to look like? What's their demeanor going to be? Mm-hmm. I think is important. I really think the Carson kid might be as good as anybody around. He came in the second half against us, and he's lightning in a bottle. Latouf was kind of your banger, but this is a home run hitter. So, I think he can score from anywhere on the field. He reminds me of the Hollingsworth kid, du jour, from 2 years before. So those are some questions there. And then defensively, obviously bringing in the gentleman from Wilmington and probably a new scheme. I'm not sure if they'll stay in the 3-3 that was kind of a staple of Cray. And a boatload of young coaches over there with an incredible amount of experience at the Division I level and been on some great prep teams. So what's the staff mix look like? How do they develop as a staff when there's quite a few first-year coaches there?
I think the advantage that they have is, as we all know, their head coach has been there time and time again. And I think, to your point, Wayne, he's got a calming presence. He'll give them the freedom to probably be able to run what they want to run. Prep's really good, as we know, at adapting and adjusting. And they'll do that, no question about it. They're going to have to do that in week one because their opponent is the Erie Royals, who nearly picked them off last season with Paul Johnson, who was ineligible for certain games last season at the helm of quarterback. He didn't start the game. He came into that game, and I remember sitting with Jonathan Williams on the sideline and saying, man, Paul Johnson, if he could just get a little bit better of decision-making on hurried throws, he'd be some unbelievable quarterback. I'll tell you what, Wayne, I got to give credit to Andre Henderson. This Erie Royal team has gotten better and better every year. Paul Johnson's now back at quarterback, and when you look at Erie this season, they are loaded with talent. This could be the year for the Royals to potentially go and knock off McDowell, in my view. How do you see that?
Yeah, I agree with you. Although I saw some things on social media today, some things swirling around about eligibility and who's playing this weekend and who's not. So it'll be very interesting here in the next 48 hours to see what transpires. But Andre is a heck of a young man. Was a great player at IUP. We had a chance to compete against him year in and year out. Recruited him. The best thing Erie did was get that young man into high school, and he's put together a fantastic staff. And again, they've really done a great job developing the entire student athlete, getting those kids to go to class, buy into being great citizens, and that certainly pays off on the field. And Andre understands defense, played for Lou Tepper, the greatest defense coordinator in history of college football. So he understands defense, and that's kind of where they've been kind of a little shaky. But with all those athletes on offense and having a good scheme now on defense and being sound, they got a chance to be very, very good.
And again, to your point, eligibility, who knows? There many times, unfortunately, seem to be issues early in the season with Erie with eligibility. So let's just assume, for parity's sake, and again, I'm not purview to, and neither of us are purview to who's going to be eligible or not. So we're speaking in terms of we assume that everybody's going to play, and if they don't, we assume they'll get to play later in the season. Biggest thing for Erie, I think, and the two games that impressed me the most for the Royals last season, there were a few. First and foremost, I think you take the loss to Hickory, that was close, was big for them. The McDowell game at the end of the season was huge, and then the fact that the prep game, they were in it until the very end of the fourth quarter, was also big as well. The question that I have for Erie is, can their defense be as stout as they were last season? In the games that they won, they gave up a total of 6-0, 7-0, and 7 points. And so I think, as impressive as Johnson was in spurts last year, Wayne, for me, I think the biggest thing for the Royals was how steadfast and how smart they were defensively. They weren't missing assignments like you're used to seeing them doing. They weren't trying to be too aggressive to one side of the football. The secondary stayed in their lanes. The linebackers didn't over pursue to one side of the football, and I thought they were really disciplined. I used that word a lot last season when talking with Jonathan and yourself and Nick, was the discipline factor on defense. And I think if you want to beat McDowell, even a team in the Trojans this year who have to replace a lot, you're still going to have to play disciplined because you know the way McDowell's going to play. We'll get to the Trojans in a second. But again, I think that this team has enough coming back in terms of veteran presence that they can make a run. Biggest question for me is going to be is how do they handle Cathedral Prep in week one? To me, it's the game of the week on Friday. I think, again, last year, I didn't think Erie necessarily needed to beat Prep to seem like they were a better team. I don't know if they're going to be able to beat them on Friday, but if they can keep the game close like they did last year, that has to give you a bunch more confidence, does it not?
Oh, no question. And I think that they go in thinking they can beat Cathedral Prep. I think they're thinking with what they have coming back and the continuity in their staff, to your point, shoring some things up on defense and having Johnson, as an athlete at quarterback. I think they're very confident they can beat Prep. To me, it always comes down to, with Erie is going to be the discipline that they have on defense. Can that carry over to special teams? Can they make plays on special teams? Can they be there? And then their downfall in the McDowell playoff game was turnovers, right? You can't go down 14-21 nothing by turning the ball over. So when you play these big games, don't forget about that 20% special teams and the turnover margin.
Totally agree. And for Erie, too, I think it's a blessing and a curse, but probably more a blessing that their schedule is as difficult as it is to start the season. You've got Prep McDowell as 2 of your first 3 games, and Austin Town Fitch is the team that you put in the middle. So there's no cupcakes for Coach Henderson. That includes an away game at Hickory later in the season. You finish at Meadville, so they will be battle-tested when they go into the D10 title game against McDowell. They only have 7 games on their schedule per Max Prep, so we'll have to see how they fare in those. But look, even if you're 2-5 going into the D10 championship game, it doesn't mean you're a bad team. It just means you've played a murderer's row of opponents. So Erie, to me, assuming everybody is good to go in week 1, which we don't know, maybe they are, maybe they're not, but one way or another, we hope that they're all good to go for the end of the season, and it'll be a fun District 10 championship game against McDowell, Wayne, to close out our Region 7 preview. I don't know how you do it if you're Aaron Slocum this year, but he's going to try. Starting quarterback gone in Blaze Myers, top running back gone in Baby Porter, top receiver gone, and a lot of key pieces on defense. What would be your first plan of attack, Wayne, given everything that McDowell has lost if you're Aaron Slocum in that locker room starting this season?
Well, number one, you got to find a quarterback, right? So you got to settle on a quarterback, and that's where it all starts. And I believe they have a really great athlete in a sophomore. We actually saw him in a 7-on-7. Obviously, he lacks experience, and it's going to take some time for him to grow mentally in the position. But from an athletic standpoint, wow, he's impressive. I think he's about 6'4", and he looks the part. So I think you start with that and bringing Bo Orlando back, as a presence to maybe simplify some things or maybe groom him. That's the way you go there. And they're always going to be in a position to be good on offense because their tempo, they throw the ball around, check with me, do some very interesting things. So, they've got a system where they're consistently in the correct play. So that's going to be the key in that no huddle system. Can the young quarterback look over and get them in the right play from that standpoint? And they're always going to be solid defensively. They're going to be a 4-4, one high team that is going to play the run very, very well and make you throw the ball to the outside widest guys and be tough and physical up front. Dave Frank, Chris Spooner, those guys, they've got a mentality of toughness in the trenches. So that's key as well.
What was so fascinating for me, and you're talking Evan Kuhn, Wayne, who, like you said, he looks the part, the incoming sophomore, the guy, he threw a few passes last year, actually ran the ball more than he threw the ball when he came in games. He is a stud. He's more of a versatile guy, I think, than Blaze Myers is. Even though Blaze can run the football, he was more of a power quarterback. But when Bo Orlando was head coach before he stepped down and now ultimately back as the OC, I think the most interesting thing for me watching him was the way he wanted to play offense, to your point, was up-tempo, was fast, right? This pro-style offense. And I think that got him in trouble at times in games because he realized when Cooper Cousins was there and other linemen that they could just run the ball downhill and bludgeon everybody, right? I mean, they have a history of big, bulky, aggressive running backs, the last being Porter, that could just beat you downhill. It's how they beat Prep. It's how they won games in the 6A playoffs. It's how they ultimately beat Erie if you take out the turnovers in the 6A championship game last year. So now with to your point, more versatile Q and some other athletes coming back who can move around the field, does McDowell switch to more of a spread offense? I think they will. I think they should based on their personnel and what they can do. And that's what Coach Orlando's capable of doing. And Aaron Slocum is a defensive guy. So he's somebody who can help with the defense and make that happen. You mentioned the coaching staff too. I think, Wayne, the advantage that McDowell will have over Erie is just the coaching staff in general because they've been there, they've done that before. And, who knows? I think Blaze Myers was a little raw when he began as a starter. I think Evan Kuhn's going to be the same, again, assuming that he's the starting quarterback. Lucas Salt there on the roster too as a senior. But they have pieces. It's just a matter of a lot of them are starting for the first time.
Yeah, and, they have to stay healthy because they play a brutal schedule. You talk about Erie's schedule, but wait till you see McDowell's, first 3 or 4 games and the gauntlet they're going to run in Ohio. So, can they stay healthy? Can they protect that young quarterback? That's going to be critical as well.
It is tough. You mentioned McDowell. Really, the first three and the last three games of their schedule are hell, and I can say that on this podcast. The Ohio team, Highland, Menor, Chardon are their first three opponents. Then you get Erie, Meadville. Prep is on October 3rd. Then your last three games, Austintown, Fitch, who we mentioned against Erie, Steubenville, and St. Francis. Three road games to end the season. That's a gauntlet.
Yeah, St. Francis from New York, and St. Francis from New York's been very, very good. Jerry Smith does a great job up there. In the Catholic League up in Buffalo.
And credit to Coach Slocum, before that Coach Orlando, for scheduling these games. I do think in the long run, Wayne, as you guys will see playing DuBois, it helps when you schedule these out-of-town teams who are talented, does it not?
Yeah, you play a different brand of football. We're going to go down to DuBois, and they're going to throw the ball all over the yard, and then we're going to go week 2 and see a wing T team, and then we're going to go week 3 and, a 22 personnel I team, and then week 4 we're going to see a wing T team, and then week 5 we're going to see an I team. We won't see a team that's on the air against Corey, so it gives you an opportunity to be exposed to some different systems that you'll probably see if you're successful in making the playoffs.
Can't wait for Region 7. It's going to be a lot of fun. These teams, of course, will all play each other. Prep 5A, McDowell, Erie gets 6A. We know that game is already set, and the big question is going to be how will Prep do with Mike Mishler. Let's get to Region 6 in just a second. Before we do, though, again, talking with Rebbitsch Investments is our proud sponsor of this show, keeping financial guidance simple. If you want more info, head over to their website, www.rebbitchinvestments.com, or you can simply head over to their phone lines at 814-734-3433 during normal business hours. All right, let's talk Region 6. The region that this man, Wayne Bradford, will be in all season long, and you've been talking about it. You've had to plan for a bunch of different game plans because not all of them, not one of them, are the same. GM won the region last year. Of course, they didn't lose in the region. They beat Meadville in the 4A championship game in that heartbreaking loss to Clearfield in what was a 1-point defeat right at the end. So we'll have to see how everything shakes out this season. Let's start with you guys, Wayne. The big question is going to be, right, everyone's asking, how do you replace Isaac and Jacob Zeitz? But if you talk to Coach McCormick, which I have, you guys like Matt Cairo a lot. Take me through what he can do for GM this year at quarterback.
Well, if Mike Mishler's a calming influence, Matty Cairo is like still water. Just an outstanding young man, one of the nicest people you'll ever see. Great manners, servant leader, but don't let it fool you. He's competitive. He's got a big arm. There are times where I think he's probably got better skill than Isaac Zeitz. He may not be as athletic. He may be able to do some different things in the run game, but in terms of his presence as a leader, his command of the offense, it may even be better than Isaac. And, of course, Isaac and Jacob were fantastic. Matt had the benefit of being able to sit back and watch all that, right? Played primarily on defense last year for us, but got to absorb all that, got to sit in that system and stand behind and watch and say, okay, what's the read? Where's the safety overall? So I don't think we lose a beat offensively. With Matt, we got a great receiving core back. We have 3 really good tailbacks. Obviously, the question in everybody's mind is, up front because we lost all those guys. But we got a young group that might be bigger, stronger, faster than the other group. They just haven't played a game. So the question is, what's their football IQ? What's their acumen of the game, and what happens when they get into crunch time?
I think we saw after game 1 last season when you went up to Newcastle and you played a game, I think the final score was in the 40s, 49-47 or something like that, and you knew the identity, right? You didn't like the game because of the way the defense played, but it was going to be an air raid attack with Isaac and Jacob and then making crossing routes and deep patterns in between for the offense. This year, I think the DuBois game, as you pointed out before the show, could be very much more of the same, right? Finding an identity early in the season, and you're going to have 4 games away from home to begin the season before you get Corey on the 19th of September. Those away games, I'm sure you'd prefer to have at least 1 home game in there, but take me through what it will be like being on the road for such a long time before you get to come home.
I think it's great. There's no pressure. The kids are all together. Always loved road trips in the PSAC. You get on a bus and, if you're overnight, you spend 24 hours together. You really bond and you're tight. So, minimal distractions. You get on the bus, you go to the locker room, it's football, football, football. Heck, man, when you walk into these high schools at home on a Friday afternoon at 3 o'clock, there's kids running everywhere. The band is playing. There's, I have to be careful because, I'm super hyper focused. I walk in there and, it's chaotic. So I think it's an advantage for us. I think we use it, as kind of a calling card, to be tough and physical and you have to really win on the road. You have to take care of the football. So I think it takes a lot of pressure off of our team as well, because we don't have to have the fans saying, okay, what's this 9-2 football team look like, week 1 or week 2. We can grow, and by week 5, we're going to know who we are. And, it's going to be very, very easy to just, be comfortable at home when you've been in those other environments.
And then Corey and LaBeouf back-to-back home games, that rivalry middle of the season. And as we've seen with a lot of teams that have had success in the past, last 3 games, Meadville, Prep, Hickory, before the District 10 playoffs. So we will see. GM, of course, the defending champs. And now I think the other team we want to get into, Wayne, is Meadville. And I know you've probably been prepping for them since the end of last season. And I know that you had so many different looks again in the D10 championship game. But as we talked about McDowell and they lose everybody, Meadville is the opposite. You take away Amari Gretaway, you take away Braden Miller, and everybody comes back, many of them for their senior year. Jacoby Thompson, AJ Falepa, the 2 now senior quarterbacks who will be back. And it just goes across the board. Jordan Lawrence, Jacoby Thompson, all of those guys are back. And now you have a Ray Collins team that is a year older. And now I think, Wayne, they can do what they do best, and that's ground and pound. They take things on jet sweeps off the wing, but if they're really successful, they run the ball inside. I imagine you guys are looking at Meadville and knowing what they bring back. They will be a challenge this season, no doubt.
Yeah, I think, we look at every team as a challenge, and obviously, the thing that makes them one of the unique teams is the wing T offense, right? That's the great equalizer. So much misdirection, 3 running backs that can touch the ball on any snap, 4 if you involve the quarterback. Yeah. The ability to change and go to a 4 wide offense in the middle of a game, so 2 systems that you have to prepare for. I think that's the thing is they speaking of identities, have an identity, right? They know what they are. And they do it very, very well. So, we've got to, prepare for them. And if you listen to the noise around, they're not happy with their performance in the D10 game. So, they got a chip on their shoulder. They want retribution. So they'll be ready come our game, and we got to go down there. So, Ray does a tremendous job. He's a great guy.
And the great thing about it, too, is that I think you have experienced coaching staffs coming back, right? And we know there's a mutual respect between you and Meadville. I think it will be exciting to see what this unit for the Bulldogs, again, and to your point, now they have almost a 2-tiered offense that we did see more in the D10 championship game, right? They started running 4 wides on you almost consistently throughout the second half. So we are seeing a bit of that evolution, but in principle, they are a ground and pound wing T offense, which I think will be fascinating to watch. And for Meadville, too, we talked about how probably the game of the week on Friday is going to be Prep Erie. I think a close second's Meadville, Fort LaBeouf. Those are 2 teams that have very similar offenses, and last year they had a game that came right down to the wire as well. That was part of it. Remember, last year Fort LaBeouf had, I think, 4 or 5 games in the first half of the season where they ended up winning by a point or 2 in the final seconds of the fourth quarter. So Meadville with a big test early. Their schedule not easy either. They've got to go to McDowell. They've got to go to Sharon, of course, General McLean, and then Erie to end the year. So you guys both will be battle-tested for Region 6. So those are the teams that played in the game last year, Wayne. I do want to ask you quickly about Oil City. Cole Findlay does come back and return for a senior year at quarterback. What do you make of the Oilers this year? And another team that they do lose some pieces, but they also do get a couple of key returners back as well, including, in all likelihood, their quarterback.
Yeah, I think Oil City might be the most improved team this year. I think that, they will they will get back to winning ways. They started out really slow last year, but made it all the way to the playoffs and really had an opportunity to beat Meadville to, have a chance to play us a second time. But I think they have some athletes. The quarterback definitely, I think, will be more involved. They'll run him a little bit more. I think they might spread the ball out and expand their passing game a little bit. They won't be as one-dimensional. Obviously, Dan wants to run the ball and will. They do lose 4 offensive linemen. But for him, that may create an opportunity for him to see what Cole can do outside of the pocket and so forth. So I would expect him to run a little more option. They ran option 2 or 3 times against us. And that was probably a play I was more scared about than, turning around and handing it off interior. I think Oil City is going to be the surprise team in Region 6 this year.
I agree. If you were pegging one that would be, to your point, more improved, and I think maybe not a surprising improvement, but just a dramatic improvement, it would be them. We saw at the end of the season they came on late. And to your point, I mean, if they would have gotten by Meadville, it's just a totally different scheme that you have to, not an extremely different scheme, but a different scheme that you would have had to see the D10 championship game. And they will, I think, give Meadville GM a little bit of a run for their money in Region 6 when you get into the postseason. So that will be a fascinating region. Again, with 5 teams, Franklin and Warren there as well. Warren with a first-year head coach this season, and Franklin just trying to build on their 2 wins from a year ago. All right, that's Region 6, Wayne. Let's talk Region 5. I wanted to save this for last because the headline that I had for Region 5 is, will we see chaos? I hope for chaos. And last year was chaos. If you remember, we talked about Region 5 so much. You had 3 teams, Corey, Fort LaBeouf, Fairview, that were all 4-1 in the region. Corey ended up at the top invisibly of the standings with 9 wins. And we saw how it shook out in the 3A playoffs with just how everything was seeded. Let's start with the Beavers. They have been the story of the offseason that we've talked about, Wayne. We talked about them at the Save and I game, and Jeff Goodwill and his coaching staff coaching the county. The big question I have is last year a one-off, right? I mean, you have Nick Lesher, Nolan Carey, your 2 senior quarterback and running back who were such a big part of that offense. Is Corey going to be able to sustain this? How do you view this team this year, Wayne, given that, again, they're not completely dead in the water with everyone graduating, but I am fascinated to see if this is going to be another step they take because they had a great year last year.
Yeah, and I don't think it was a one-off. I think they've been good the past few years. Jeff's done a tremendous job there. But I do think that, I think they'll take a step back just because I don't think they're going to have, the weapons they had, especially at quarterback, right? Carey was an unbelievable player and did so many things in the pocket, outside of the pocket with his feet, played defense. So I think they're one of those teams that, probably loses as much productivity to graduation as anyone. And I don't know if they have the kids to step in place. So I don't think, you can call it a one-off because Jeff built that program. I just don't know if they have all the pieces together to come right back and be as good or better than that because, they had an unbelievable group of kids that grew up together, and played all the way through. And I think I've lost too much to graduation, too much productivity.
Yeah, for me, I think the advantage Corey has is they still have 2 standout wide receivers who come back. Keaton Frasina will be a senior this year. We talked about him many times with long touchdowns, right? I mean, he averaged, Max Preps is telling me, nearly 18 yards a catch. You look at a guy like Blake Cook, who went in double digits for touchdowns in the receiving category. The rushing, I think, is going to be the big problem. I think Corey remains a passing team, no question, and that's a matter of whether it's going to be quick routes, screen passes, or whether they can get the ball down the field with their new starting quarterback. But I think you have to build from the outside in, which is not what you're used to thinking if you're a head coach, right? You want to start with the quarterback in the line. But I do think Corey still has weapons. And Jeff Goodwill, to your point, he's done a great job of building the program. I think a lot of the pieces not named quarterback can be interchangeable with the scheme that he runs because the guys that there seem to get it. They just seem to get it, Wayne. And I remember when you and I talked last year about what was the one game on your schedule that you were most, I don't want to say in fear of, but that you wish you could have another crack at. You said Corey. And I just think that even if they lose the talent that they had from last season, they're going to have enough pieces, and the scheme is good enough, I think, to keep them competitive. My big question is going to be, I think it will be for everyone, is how many games do they win inside the region? They got a really tough game in Titusville coming up on Friday night to start the year. Their schedule does help them a little bit. They got Fort LaBeouf on September 5th. They don't have to play another, I think, region contender realistically until October 10th in Fairview. So they do get a bit of a break to figure out who they are. Of course, coming up and playing you guys on the 19th of September. So Corey is a fascinating team to me. I do think they're a program that's going to be around for quite a bit of time. It's just, can they get to 9 wins, and can they get to 4 wins in the region? Because I think 4 wins is probably going to be where you need to get at minimum to win Region 5. All right, Fort LaBeouf time. Another team that, and we talked about this at nauseum. I still don't know how they won 3 of the games that they won last second. They were the Houdinis of the season last year. The last second win against Farrell with that 2-point conversion at the very end. That last second touchdown against Corey in what I think was a monsoon back at the beginning of September. That was a crazy game. Then they come back, of course, they beat Grove City right at the end in a great defensive game. Take me through what Fort LaBeouf has this year. Again, they are a running team, Wayne. They do also get their quarterbacks back, and whoever that QB is with Dominic Walters and Xavier Blows, they do have some returning pieces.
Yeah, I think that's the biggest question mark for them is can they expand, what they do offensively with the 2 quarterbacks. And in the middle of the season thereafter, they had those dramatic wins. They just got crushed by the injury bug, so it was one of those, seasons where everything that can go wrong does, right? Quarterback goes down to an injury, then blows his kid a wide out, moves the quarterback. He goes down with an injury. So I think they just, they really got hit hard by the injury bug. They do graduate a few, blows his older son. And they're always great defensively. And I think they've experimented a little bit with the passing game. And I think that's kind of their next evolution, right? If they can get a passing game together where if they're down by a touchdown or 2, they have an opportunity to come back, and win a game and be able to be more than one-dimensional, I think those are the keys. So I think LaBeouf in that region, might have the best chance of winning if they stay healthy.
I think for LaBeouf, the big question will be, and you mentioned the passing game. I look at the passing game and I think, can you do it a little bit from the shotgun? They had a lot of success with play action passing from under center, and I think naturally that's the progression. If you're a traditional under center running team, right, you play from play action under center. But I think the shotgun element adds a little bit too, and we even saw with Meadville, and you saw it firsthand when they went to 4 wide. It doesn't take a long time to learn that. Now, the intricacies I get, right? Different patterns, different motion. But if you can find 3 or 4 guys who you can split out wide at receiver, then you just become give yourself another layer, right? There's another dimension to your offense. I really think, again, assuming that they're healthy between Blows and Walters, they'll be able to be a nice 1-2 combo, specifically in the passing and receiving department. And then also, too, Walters was a big runner as well. Again, he accumulated over 5,000 yards before he went down. Damian Blows, does it hurt to lose him? Sure. But they have production, and they have a quarterback who, and we know this has to be true, Wayne, if you want to run spread, who's a versatile quarterback. He can run and throw. And so I think if you can add some RPO in some order for Fort LaBeouf, even if it's just something simple, that helps you a ton.
And you talked about the passing game, getting 3 or 4 guys out there to catch the ball. It's not the quarterback and the wideouts that are the issue. It's taking those 5 guys up front that have their hand in the dirt and pull and run block and down and do the wing T scheme, and then saying, oh, by the way, getting a 2-point stance and retreat and pass protect. You know what I mean? That becomes the challenge because that's an entirely different skill, different mentality. And that's where, all right, you don't have any experience. How do you protect? Are you sliding the protection? What's the mic call? If they, understanding protections, you just don't put a passing system in and, do that. Now, I'll tell you a quick story if you don't have a moment. We had a guy who worked with us at Edinboro. His name was Tom Perry, and he was a spread guru guy. Worked at Mercyhurst for a while, worked in the Bronx. Great guy. Knew everything about the passing game from the quarterback and the wide receiver part. we're back in the office one day, and he gets on the board, and this is the goodness honest truth. He draws the quarterback, the running back, and the receivers. No offensive line. He's drawing routes everywhere, So I'm sitting there and I'm just chuckling and laughing. And Coach Browning, who's the head coach at the time, of course, great offensive line coach, we're just looking and all. And finally, Tom puts the marker down, looks back, and what do you think? And Scott says, "Man, those are all great." He goes, "I have one question." And Tom says, "What is that?" He goes, "Well, how are we going to protect that?" Tom throws the marker down and says, "I don't know. You're the offensive line coach. You figure it out." So, you have these video games, you have these 7-on-7s, and, you're throwing it all over the place. But, what happens when there's bringing 4 weak or bringing 4 strong or 2 through the A? That becomes an issue.
I almost equivocate that to, you're on a really nice golf course and you've got this really great caddy who's been giving you all sorts of great reads all day. You're on the 18th hole, you're looking to shoot your best score ever, and you got about a 20-foot putt. The caddy gives you this unbelievable read. He's taking you through the contours. Everything looks perfect, and he gives you your driver to putt the ball. You lost your putter on the 17th hole.
Amen.
That's what it looks like to me. Yeah, you need the line. I think it's pretty
right.
clear. We've seen that a lot in District 10 football. You could have an amazing quarterback and great weapons, and if you can't protect them, you've got zero chance to win the game. Keep in mind, too, remember, Fort LaBeouf Corey starting to bud into a bit of a rivalry. They played each other a couple of times last year. LaBeouf nearly clipped them in the playoffs. It was a 9-6 game, missed extra point. You could argue may have been the difference for LaBeouf. The game was actually won on a field goal, which is not something you see every day here. LaBeouf, again, that game against Meadville coming up on Friday, a huge game, I think, for the Bison in the way that they play in that game. Remember, 41-27 was the score last year. They didn't win the game, but I think their offense put up a good fight with the way they were able to play at home, and the rest of their schedule, I think, suits up well. Corey on September 5th will be a big game. They do travel to you guys on the 26th, and then it's a 3-week stretch after that. Fairview, Harbor Creek, Girard, 3 huge games near the end of the year for Fort LaBeouf. That's going to, I think, determine their fate in the region. How about Fairview? Again, another team last year that, and, rarely do you ever see Mark Sobolewski get emotional. I remember interviewing him after the Fort LaBeouf game on a Friday in October, and I felt bad. I didn't have a lot of time. I was trying to just get out of there so I could do the 10 o'clock show on TV. And, Mark's a great guy. I love him. But sometimes after a game, the sound bites he gives are a more 5-6 second, this is what we did. And I've never seen a guy get that emotional in a win against a team that they had struggled against for so long and ultimately propelled them to a share of the region championship. When you look at this team, Wayne, and what they bring back, again, I think the advantage this year for Fairview is you didn't ever want Vinny Campoli to be hurt, but Carlos Aminio got a lot of reps because of Campoli being down. He comes back. Tyler DeVecchio comes back. Robbie Benford is back. They have the guys in the receiving game and even the running game as well. I think that could lead this team pretty far this year as well.
Yeah, I think, if they stay healthy, they'll have a great chance because, to your point, Mark's a great X and O's guy and has a great staff, understands, offense, defense, special teams. They've always had great special teams, great kickers and punters out there, which is an advantage. Mark understands situational football, game management. Anytime you can pull the triple out anywhere, and run option, that's a problem. As much as the wing T is a great equalizer, the triple, the midline, the quarterback runs, oftentimes you don't account for the quarterback in the run game, right, or in your numbers, so you get a +1 with all the quarterback runs, and not only do they have midline triple, they've got quarterback power, so they've got the whole gambit there. I think it'll be a very interesting year, between the big three there. It certainly could be chaos all over again.
Yeah, and as we saw last year, all three of them beat one, lost to the other, right? You got for Fairview is the biggest example. You beat Fort LaBeouf on the road, you come back home against Corey. And again, there was injuries that played a factor or two in Fairview's season last year, whether it be the quarterback or other pieces as well, but you lose to Corey in big fashion, so there's really no separation between the teams. And to your point, Wayne, I will say it would not shock me if we see at least one, maybe two wins for Fairview come off the foot of Danny Lindenberger, who without a doubt going to be the top kicker in District 10 this season, and I think a guy who could probably, if I had to guess, he'd probably tell you he'd make it comfortably from 40. I think he can make it from 50. I've seen the guy kick before. He's a stud. So keep that in mind, too. Special teams always matter. We've seen that so many times in Region 5. Any of the last three teams, Wayne, we didn't get to Harbor Creek, Girard, Northeast. Any one of those three do you think has a chance to be very competitive here in Region 5?
Northeast, we saw them in a 7-on-7, and they look very, very good physically. They look physical. They look athletic. I was very impressed with them in person. So I think that Northeast could be the wild card there. If you said, hey, what's your wild card in that region? I'll say Northeast wins the region.
Wow. To get the quarterback back, in all likelihood, Bryson Galloway coming back for a junior season. They do have some receiving guys that come back as well. Really, it's like the whole starting basketball team. Carter Crozier, Logan Lattimore, who I think plays basketball too. So they got some freak athletes out there. And Wayne, when Northeast is good, their line is one of the best. Offense and defensive lines, you mentioned their strength. We'll see. It'll be interesting. They did have a few games last year where they were competitive. They played Seneca tough. They had a really good game with Fort LaBeouf that they almost won on a Thursday and probably should have won at home. Fairview, I don't think 24-7 was a great indication of how competitive that game was for three quarters. So a good pick. Northeast is one to look out for. John Anger and Harbor Creek will be tough as well. Mark Brooks doing a great job with Girard. They're going to be better this year. So there are a lot of great coaches and a lot of great things in Region 5. I can't wait. I hope that there's a lot of chaos. I hope we see it translate to the 3A playoffs. We almost did last year. But again, you always have to factor in the Mercer County powerhouses in Region 4 that will play a part come playoff time. All right, so that's Region 7, 6, and 5. And I thought it would be cool to talk about a couple of guys that we think could be in the conversation for District 10 Player of the Year. Now, again, I know you focus on your team. There's a lot that you miss because of everything you coach. But is there a guy that maybe we haven't talked about this year or that we have talked about that you think could be the front runner currently, or at least right there for District 10 Player of the Year this year?
Well, you got the Feliciano kid at Mercier's Prep, right?
I was going to bring it up if you didn't bring it up.
Yeah, so you got the great tailback there. I think Carson could be certainly a surprise guy. I think that they'll give the ball to him more and try to take some pressure off Friedman. Not make it the Davin Friedman show. Be a little more balanced from that standpoint. I know that we have a couple guys that I think could factor in at a couple of different positions, depending on how much we spread the football around. Our problem is we've got so many that we might not give one enough to do enough. Unlike last year where it was the Jacob Zeit show, I think we'll be much more balanced in terms of spreading the ball around there. The Finley kid from Oil City could be a shocker. He could be somebody that really comes out of nowhere and makes some noise. Those would kind of be my inklings right now. Just seeing what I've seen in 7-on-7s and so forth.
Yeah, I agree. I think if I look across the board, and this is where we bring the Mercer County conversation forefront, I think Farrell has two players in their quarterback, Aaron Pegas, and their receiver, Jules Johnson, who could potentially be District 10 Players of the Year. I don't know how in the world they started off the way they started at 0-3 last season. It blows me away, and I think they're going to be much better, and they're going to be, in all likelihood, playing Mercyhurst Prep in the 2A championship game unless something drastic happens. I've been talking a lot about Cole Bennett from Iroquois. This coming back senior quarterback, big, tall drink of water. I think he and Manny Johnson, the head coach up there, who for me has done a great job, and I think they're a lot better of a team than what their 3-7 record was last year. I think he could be a sneaky good guy, especially if they can find another piece or two on the offensive line to be able to protect him. We know Sharon and Hickory have some extremely good players, and I mean, Hickory every single year is going to be right in there. And again, you have to factor in the team aspect, and that from top to bottom, they are amongst the best. You could really mention anyone in Region 6 or Region 7. I like the pick of Carson from Prep, especially with knowing how early in the season they're going to probably want to ground and pound the ball as much as they possibly can. Paul Johnson, if he can play as many games as he's able to play, if you get where I'm going, I think he could be somebody that could be a contender for District 10 Player of the Year. For me, though, it's Vinny Feliciano, and I know that's the obvious pick. I'm actually going to be calling a good amount of their games this season. I've got them in Sharon in the opener, which I think is going to be an amazing game. And I know Jeff Root, if he were on the air right now, he'd probably tell you, well, I don't want to have to use him as much as I can, but why not? I mean, the guy, it would not surprise me if the guy gets to 3,000 yards this season. And that is wild to think about. He had nearly 2,400 on the ground in his sophomore season. He caught the ball for a good amount as well. I'm not sure that I've seen as shifty as a running back as Vinny in quite some time. Is there any comps, Wayne, that you've coached in high school or have you seen on high school that is comparable to Vinny?
You know, I haven't had the opportunity, you know, because I'm playing every week to watch him outside of a few highlights. I know he's a sprinter, you know. Yeah. You know, so he's not a Journey Brown, right? But, you know, you've got some Journey Brown in terms of, you know, sprinter.
Yeah.
You know, in terms of shifty guys, you know, you probably have to go back to some of the great ones at Prep, you know, from a few years back. Billy, Billy played at Duquesne, and can't remember Billy's last name.
Fessler?
Off the top. No, the running back.
Yeah. It's escaping me too.
Yeah, and he ended up going to Liberty and playing 1AA at Liberty, and then of course they had the Michigan State running back. So, you know, they've had some guys, but that would probably be the closest comparison to elite, you know, most recently. Now, Owens from Northeast was a different cat, you know what I mean, Garrett. So he was like a deer, man. He just kind of galloped, and he was big and strong, so he wasn't very shifty, but you know, he'd run three and do some things. You know, those would probably be kind of my comparisons most recently.
Billy Lucas, I think, is the name.
Billy Lucas, yeah, I couldn't think of it. So thank you. Thanks for saving me.
No, it's okay. Out of all the names I had on my list, I did not have Billy Lucas on there. So you know that one better than I do. Yeah, I just think, and he can do it all too. He can play out wide. He can play special teams. And we were talking about this on an earlier version of our podcast, is that Vinny Feliciano is a running back by heart, but Jeff Root can play him anywhere. So you can have multiple sets and formations for Vinny to quite literally be a receiver, a running back, a jet guy, a wing guy. You could line up a tight end and have him run a route. I mean, the guy can do anything. And even though he's getting the ball, it's one thing to be able to know he's getting it. It's another thing to scheme and to stop him. So I'm very interested. I think the Sharon game will be tough for Mercyhurst Prep to start the year, but if he can get some yards on that defense, they're going to be a tough out this year in Mercyhurst Prep. After Sharon, realistically, I'm not sure I see another loss on their schedule. And maybe Fort LaBeouf at the end of the season, you know, could a Harbor Creek or a Corey middle of the year give them some trouble? Eisenhower's always tough, but I just don't see a game that's going to trip them up after Sharon. So I think if there is the biggest close to a lock that I would predict this season, it would be a Faro Mercyhurst Prep District 10 championship game. That is about the closest thing that I could say in 2A or really in any class that I would call a lock in 2025. All right, Wayne, let's end with this, and I'm gonna have you take GM out of this because we could both say GM. We love the Lancers, no question about it. Give me the team this year that you think will perform based on the teams that they play, based on the games, challenge of their schedule, and the expectation. What team are you most looking forward to seeing have a successful year in 2025?
All right, I'm gonna go right from the heart. Northwestern and Ben Fennell, Ben going back home. Ben, I recruited, played for us at Edinboro. A great guy, paid his dues, been around. And there's nothing better when a guy wants to go home, you know what I mean? And make his hometown proud. So we've seen Northwestern in a couple 7-on-7s, had an opportunity to be around Ben a little bit, in the summer and kind of share some things with him about coaching life. So I'm really excited to see Ben, do great things at Northwestern. So I'm going to take that one. I got a soft spot in the heart for Jack and Seth out at Seneca. They always do a tremendous job with what they have. And then there's another guy, that I worked with and coached with, Jim Penley, who does a fantastic job. So there's so many great guys around. So you want to see all of them, be successful. So they're probably all going to play one another. But with Ben being in his first year, I'm gonna root for Ben and hope that they have a great year at Northwestern.
I will say that's a great pick, by the way. And as much as I talk about it, I think a lock between Mercyhurst Prep and Farrell is in 2A. That's saying a lot because you have a Seneca team that returns their starting quarterback, their top 3 running backs, their top 2 receivers. My sleeper team this year was actually going to be the Seneca Bobcats because I think they could be another tank. And what we've seen Jack Corey do, first of all, he's one of the nicest coaches in District 10, bar none. He'll talk to you about anything. He'll laugh with you, he'll smile with you, he'll be honest with you, and I think that's something that means a lot to those players out there in Erie County. And I think Seneca could really make a run. I do think that those guys coming back will make it difficult. And remember, they weren't, they didn't give Farrell a run for their money in the semifinal, but they had an 8-2 year last year. They were no joke, no slouch. So Seneca will upset a team at some point this season, no doubt. And I would love to get to see them play Mercyhurst Prep in the semifinal round. I think that would be an amazing opportunity for both those teams to go. Ultimately, I think if you're looking at Seneca, for me, it would literally just come down to the guy who's on the field for Mercyhurst Prep. Seneca played them tough last year. It was a 2-touchdown game, really was a 1-score game till the very end. So Seneca is my sleeper team. I also think if we're talking about from the heart, I'm a huge Manny Johnson guy. I really think Iroquois is going to get this thing turned completely around in 3 to 4 years if Manny's still there. Again, last year, you look at the way they were able to win 3 games. And again, for Iroquois, the way that program's been going, it's a huge improvement from a couple seasons ago. I think this year could be another year they take a step with Bennett coming back and just having other guys who could really be a big factor as well. If we're talking team of the year, I think it would be hard to go against some of the usual suspects. Obviously, you guys are going to be in that mix. I think Meadville, with everybody coming back, will be in that mix as well. And you could pick realistically any Mercer County team. I think Farrell and Sharon would come to top of mind as well. But I'll tell you what, there's something special in Region 7. I think one of McDowell Prep or Erie High, and I know those are the usual suspects, could have a really incredible season too. So a lot of options for team of the year. You could go to Mercyhurst Prep. You could go to Erie with the way that they have talent on their roster this year. Probably whoever wins the 4A championship game is going to have a great chance to make a run in states. Region 5 is going to be chaos. So I don't know I can pick one, Wayne, but I think we're setting the table up for another really competitive high school football season when we had a good one last year too.
Yeah, I think, the coaching has really gotten really good. We were down at the Lineman Challenge, at Cache. There's a team that is going to surprise people.
Yeah.
Cache is going to make a run, and they're in an incredibly difficult region. But Cache is another team that is going to be in the top 3 for most improved. They got a lot of guys back. They got some skill. They got some linemen. Don't be surprised if you see them doing some great things. They have a great staff. Their head man is an awesome guy. The great thing about District 10 is that there's just some really, really great people coaching kids, from top to bottom. You got Ray Collins, you got state troopers, you got retired guys, Dan York, who's been retired forever. You got young guys like Marshall McCormick. You got guys coaching their alma mater. You got guys coming back for their 3rd time, and Mike Mishler. You name it. You've got a really, really great group of men that are doing great things in their communities. And I'm humbled and excited to be a part of that. And, my favorite part of Friday nights, and you probably see me, is pregame, just going and, talking to a Terry Borelli, and, talking, to, the old guy at Mr. Vault, and some of those guys, man. Marshall and those guys are like, hey, you gonna come over to pregame? I'm like, well, I'm having a discussion here. You know what I mean? We're talking ball with guys that have been doing it for 30 or 40 years, and it's really great because there's no animosity. It's just guys that aren't making any money and spending their afternoons and evenings and Friday nights with other men and women's children, to make the world a better place. So that's the greatest thing about football.
And it's so short too, and then that's what makes it so special. Is it's a sprint. It's a few weeks and playoffs, and then you're done. And so we're at August 20th right now. First Friday will be here quick, and then the season just rolls from there. It feels like it takes forever to get the season going, and then once it goes, it just takes off. So we can't wait to be there with you. It's going to be so much fun. Of course, we're going to be with you every step of the way, watching games with you, reacting to games with you. And anything's on the table for when we start our high school football rapid reaction, which is coming your way Friday at 10 o'clock. We don't know who's going to join us. Wayne can join us whenever he wants. He doesn't have a game Friday night.
I may be there.
Nick Hartman, feel free. Stop in, my friend. You can pregame the pregame with us. That maybe that's the best way for you to do it.
I'm probably gonna go to the Oil City Harbor Creek game and the Meadville Fort LaBeouf game, but there won't be a single pass thrown in either one of those games, so they'll be over early.
Wayne Bradford's going to be our analyst for all the Region 5 and 6 teams that we don't get to coming up as well.
The two fastest games Friday night will be those two.
I wouldn't blame you. Those would be the games that I would want to go to if you want to see great, quick running action. Of course, Prep Erie coming up on Friday night. And then the Saturday slate starts with GM and Du Bois. We have the time wrong at the bottom. It's a 1 o'clock kick between GM and Du Bois. You've got Farrell and Hickory on Saturday evening, and Mercyhurst Prep travels to Sharon. What a slate on Saturday. So we go almost 48 whole hours of great high school football, Wayne. Hey, good luck this season as always, man. I know we're going to see you throughout the year as well. We're talking NFL and college later on in future episodes as well, but this has been fun. I can't wait. It's going to be a fun year. And keep doing your pregame stuff, man. You got to get a break every now and then.
That's right.
Got to let me know who you talk to down in Du Bois. I'm sure they got a lot of cool characters down there.
I got a bunch of Mr. Pasternak is the principal, and Ryan played for me. So I got a bunch of kids from out there in District 9 that I recruited, so I'm sure there'll be a bunch of guys out there, rooting against me. No, but it'll be fun to see them.
All in good fun, man. All right, Friday night, we're back at 10 o'clock to talk high school football. See you later, everybody. High school football just around the corner. Follow us, Gem City SN. This has been the Gem City Sports Podcast. Everyone take care.